Ayan. Hello everyone! Welcome to UTrade's InvesTalk webinar. Kamusta po ang lahat? I hope that you and your family are all safe. Thank you everyone for joining with us. And for today's webinar, our speaker will share some key knowledge in investing in financial markets. Very special talaga ang webinar na ito dahil teaching our children the value of saving and investing is truly a gift that keeps on giving. And without further ado, let us all welcome our speaker for this webinar, Mr. Edmund Martinez, VP of Digital Marketing and Wealth Strategy for UD Capital Securities Inc. Hi, Sir Ed.
Hello, thank you, Rix, for that very generous introduction. Welcome everyone to this seminar. So, of course, we're calling this InvesTalk because not only is it very important for the financial future of yourself and your children, but also when you listen to things like this, when you attend webinars, it's also an investment in knowledge, right? So today we're going to talk about learning and teaching your child the value of investing, because as you all know, in the Philippines, medyo kind of taboo pa yung usapan about pera. I remember growing up and I had this impression that money is really an adult's problem. But in reality, money is something that children should also be aware of, because more than just the knowledge of investing and saving, it's also a habit that you have to allow them to grow. Para din siyang muscle that you have to practice, no? And this morning, we aim to give you that knowledge. But of course, that knowledge will not come without any practice. So now let me allow to share my screen. Yan, share lang natin screen natin. All right, so welcome to InvesTalk once again. So there are four things that we need to talk about this morning. Number one is that we advise all parents and children to make use of their best advantage, to make use of your child's best advantage, which is time, right? Later on, I'll show you how you can master or harness time into your kid's advantage when it comes to investing. Second, you and your kids should be able to appreciate the stock market for what it is. Because unfortunately, when you start learning about the stock market today through the internet and social media, you might be led to think that it is something that it's not, no? Mamaya pag-uusapan natin yan. Number three is to consider available help. So as you all know, the stock market is a challenging thing to do, but fortunately, in the financial economy of recently, fortunately, in the financial economy of late, there are also structures that can help you invest even without getting that experience and knowledge when it comes to the stock market. And fourth, is to make it a family conversation. Now, it's best to start that habit already, no? So mamaya I'll share with you my experience when, talking about financials in my family and also with my growing kids, right? So first, let's take advantage of their time, the time that they have. So here's a quote from Mr. Albert Einstein. No, I'm sure some of you may think na, "Oy, this is a misquoted quote," no, but nevertheless, it's there, available in the internet, and it doesn't really diminish its value. The quote says that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. So I'm sure as an adult in this modern world, you've already experienced this one way or another, diba? When I was young and financial knowledge was not yet ingrained in me, diba? Of course, I learned it through my experience through the banks. No, that compounded interest can bite you with your credit card debts, no? Kaya nga sinasabi natin sa mga customers natin or people who we want to help that they have to pay off their credit cards, because when they don't, then the interest will compound on their loan, which is very, very hard to pay. Now, that is for a person who doesn't understand it, no? Akala lang yun, the minimum is something that you have to pay, but in reality, you have to pay everything for you to avoid that vicious cycle of debt. But for those who understand it, know that you have to do it regularly and do it over a long period of time for you to be able to get compounded interest. And later on, I'll show you some examples on how this is achieved. So let's do a scenario. No, first let's invest 5,000 per month, 5,000 pesos. So on a monthly basis. So that's only 166 pesos per day. And in some other seminars that we do hold, we tell our customers what that 166 pesos a day means for most Filipinos. No, it could be your Starbucks drink, it could be a pack of cigarettes if you're into that thing. No, it could be like as as a snack middle of the day. And sometimes 166 pesos can mean very little to us. But if you just set aside that expense, no, and started saving it, no, keeping it aside on a monthly basis, in an interest rate around 5% per annum, then the results can be quite dramatic. And here are the results based on different start dates. No, if you choose to start when you're 40, then your 5,000 pesos invested monthly in an asset that earns 5% per annum will get you around 2 million pesos. So, not that bad, right? But if you started when you get to start working, that value goes up to around 6 million pesos, no? So you're investing every month until you're 60 here. So that's around 6 million pesos, no? If you start naman when you're in middle school, that's around 12 million pesos, di ba? From when you're from your 12 years old until you are 60, that's 12 million pesos. But what about when you start at age 0? For instance, your parents decided to open you an account and started investing when you were born or the next day you were born, right? Then that amount can go up to 22 point almost 23 million pesos by the time you reach 60. So that is the potential of doing a small thing over a long period of time and habitually investing it at an asset that will give you 5% per annum. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about regular stock investing. So instead of investing in uh, an asset that earns you 5%, then you now invest in something higher, no? Right, like 10% per annum. And later on, I'll show you the average returns of the stock market. But at sa umpisa pa lang, let me tell all of you guys that investing in the stock market, of course, gives you 14%, 12% per annum of return, but it comes at a cost, and the cost is normally volatility. But when you do regular investing on a monthly basis, then um, it kind of irons that volatility away. That's why we advise it to be done over a long period of time. So let's tweak a bit our simulation. No, for 5,000 pesos every month, so that's 166 pesos per day, done on a monthly basis, and then invested in an asset that earns 10% per annum. So the yield for the total amount that you can raise for your kids, not when they're 60, but when they are 18 years old, no? Itong regular stock investing, we started from 0 to 18 years old. Now the value of that investment will be at 3 million pesos already. Now let me pause for a while and allow you to think about the possibilities that your child can have with 3 million pesos when they're 18. They can talk about, buying their own car. They can talk about buying their own condo, or they can just keep investing. They have no worries getting married. They have no worries uh, trying to spend for their dream vacation. If they want to go around the world, they can definitely do it at 3 million pesos. No? And it all starts with 5,000 pesos a month from the time they're born until they're 18. Now, some of you might think, ano yung 3 million pesos na yan? Parang ang laki naman yan for a kid. And true enough, that's what my wife and I talked about. So at the end of the day, I just gave it to my wife. Parang ganon, diba? Happy wife, happy life, no? But nevertheless, this 3 million pesos will allow your kids to open many doors, especially when they're about to start their adult life, no? So think about it. Now, let me talk to you about, of course, yung source ng kanina pinag-usapan natin na 10%. Now, that's an undoubtedly the stock market. And there's many reasons why we recommend the stock market. Not because we work in the we're a broker for stocks, but generally the next best competitor for this is yung properties nga, no? In a study done, I think a few years back, they've compared that of course stocks still give the best returns for your money when you get the average for all developed economies from 1950 to present. And the second place in that ranking in that study is actually property. No, gives a little bit less, but it takes the advantage of having the least amount of volatility. Kumbaga, it can be subject to huge swings, but it's not as volatile as the stock market. But nevertheless, the best performing asset market is still the stock market. No, but stocks have an advantage over property and other investment assets. That's it's easy to that advantage is that the stock market is easy to access. Not just direct stock investing, no, but also trying to access it through other means, like for instance, when you're trying to invest via funds. Later on, pag-uusapan natin yan. So this chart shows you the average return of each and every asset class. And from a period of 2008, September 2008 to January 2021, the stock market has an average return of around 14%. That's well above the 10% that we've illustrated kanina, no? But don't get me wrong, as mentioned, the returns are volatile, but on average, it's around 14%. Now, bonds, I think we measured two types of bond funds here from two different providers because, for many reasons, it's more convenient to access these through a bond fund. It's around 5%. Now, for money market funds, these are short-term securities, either from the government or from corporations that are normally less than 1 year. That's around 2.3%. And finally, for deposits, that's 0.5%. As you can see, only stocks and can undoubtedly beat inflation consistently, which is on average at 3.07%. So if you ask me, you get the 10% return from you get the 10% return from regularly investing in stocks. Okay, so a quick summary, no? Your kids have a lot of time, and this is one of the key formulas for building wealth. When you have time, then you can access an asset like stocks, diba? That has volatility as its main cost, no? And when you apply time into that volatility, then you tend to iron it out. Parang nababaliwala yung volatility because you're looking at it at longer time scales. Second, it's not bad to, start a regular investing program for your kids and tap the power of compounding, no? I think that's one of the first things I did when my daughter was born, no? Because I think later on, Rika will talk about how to open an ITF account, which is a special account that you can open with your kids, that it requires a birth certificate, no? There was one story when I was working, there was one story where a customer asked us, "Sir, pwede bang to follow yung birth certificate, no?" And sabi namin, "Bakit?" Tapos sabi ng customer, it's because hindi pa pinapanganak yung bata. Hindi ho pwede, kailangan there's already a live birth certificate so you can open the ITF account. Okay? And third, the stock market is a good source of returns. But gaya ng sabi ko kanina, it's volatile, no? But because you're investing over a long period of time, then medyo baliwala yung volatility na yan. Okay, next we're gonna talk about how to look at the stock market for what it really is. No, kanina sabi ko, when you start learning about the stock market in this modern age, you access social media, you access the internet, you tend to think that the stock market is something that it is not. Some of the more popular impressions about the stock market is that it is a place to gamble or to place to take risks. Huhula ka ng mga taker, diba? Kung natin yan, ano ba, AC or ALI or gano'n, MEG, then put money in it, then you keep your fingers crossed and you hope that everything turns out okay, no? And that is not the case. It is certainly something you can do in the stock market, much like with everything else. Like nung bata ako, nagte-text kami, we're betting on cards. So you can also bet with playing cards. But Of course, some people sinuswerte dyan. And you see this in the internet. You see this in Instagram. You see it in yung mga grupo nila sa Facebook. That pag sinuwerte sila, they get to show it to everybody. But in reality, ang swerte po, hindi na uulit. Ang strategy, kaya mong ulitin. So if you look at the stock market for what it really is, then you can apply the strategy. Another misconception that people have on the stock market is that it's a get rich quickly scheme. No, some groups over the internet may lead you to think that oh sige, they tend to post their portfolios in their stock accounts. They try to change the HTML in that site and make it appear that they have a lot already. They have tens and millions of pesos. No, but in reality, much like most things, the stock market takes time. It takes time to learn. It takes time to really see what the value is. Now, what the stock market really is a supermarket for businesses. It's a place where you can buy a business that you want to participate in, no? Similar to how you go through a supermarket. Now, it's funny because most customers that I've spoken to, when they ask about a certain ticker, no, when they talk about a certain company, they surprisingly, they don't know much about this particular company or the companies that they're asking us about. And one particular story I have is when we went to, I think that was in Baguio, no? When we did the seminar in Baguio, fortunately, the driver was also one of our customers. And when he was driving us to the place where we were supposed to have that talk, and he asked us, sir, um, ano ba tingin niyo sa CHP? No? So for a while, I thought I was going to give an outlook in the cement industry, in the construction, and how the pandemic kind of changes everything. And then I was surprised when he asked, ano ho ba yung CHP? So I was surprised, no? I also asked him, oh, you don't know what CHP is. And I proceeded to ask, uh, for something that you don't actually know, how much of your portfolio did you put or how much of your money did you put to CHP? Sabi niya, boss, siguro around mga 30 to 40% of my portfolio. And believe me, I was floored. Why? Because how can you put something, 40% of your savings and your investment, in your investment kitty or your nest egg to something that you don't know? And that is the first step in investing in the stock market. It's just learning what you're buying. Kulang-kulang na lang, di ba? And we were surprised that he even asked us, ano ba yun, sir? Is it a snack food company? Kasi cheap daw, CHP, no? So, kind of funny. But CHP is Cemex Holdings Philippines. It's a cement company, no? So I told her, I told our driver, saan mo naman nakuha yung advice na yan? Why did you put so much of your money into something that you actually don't know? Sabi niya, kasi I followed this guru in a group that talked about CHP as an investment. So that, ladies and gentlemen, and kids who are watching, is a recipe for disaster. No, I want people to exercise that same diligence in buying stocks to when you are entering an actual business. Now, for instance, you have a friend of yours who come to you with a business idea. O pare, pasukin natin itong business na to. I'm selling sneakers online, something like that. What's your first question? Diba? You medyo makilatis ka. Ask them, oh, ano bang magkano yung capital dyan? Sinong market natin? Who will develop the site? Anong mga sapatos yan? How do we know if those sneakers are good or not? No? So, pag ganun, if someone's offering you a business, you tend to, try to do your due diligence with regard to that business. In the stock market, surprisingly, some people don't even do that. They just rely on the advice in social media. They look at price movement and they cross their fingers. I want you to exercise that same uh, standard in buying stocks in the stock market. Treat it as if you are investing in a business, which it really is. Kaya pinag-uusapan natin, di ba? Appreciating the stock market for what it really is. It's a supermarket for businesses. So exercise the same amount of diligence. Yeah. So as you all know, the Philippines, the stock market is composed of course, the index. You have the 30 largest and most actively traded companies in the Philippines. You have the likes of Ayala, Aboitiz, Robinson's Land. You have Meralco, San Miguel, SM Investments Corporation, PLDT. You have Metro Pacific, owner of hospitals, owner of the tollways. I think to some extent they also own a bit of Meralco, I think. So some utilities as well. You have Alliance Global, which is a conglomerate. For those of you who don't know, they own Mega World and also Emperador. I think it's part of Alliance Global. You have Ayala Land, BDO, JG Summit Holdings. That's I think Sebpac and the other businesses of the Kokong Ways. You have GT Capital. Most of you don't know what this conglomerate is, but essentially this is the holding company of the T family. That's the Metrobank Group, the bank, and of course their property company, uh, Federal Land, and so many others. You have banks like Security Bank, BPI, Petron, Robinson's Retail. They own the malls that yung Robinson's malls. You have SM Prime, Pure Gold, DMCI. So that's DM Consunhi. We also have Semirara, and as mentioned, as part of Alliance Global, you have Mega World, First Gen. This is an energy company. Universal, Robina, yung mga snack foods that we love are owned by these guys, and Metrobank and Globe. So these are the 30 largest companies in the Philippines, plus another 245 other businesses listed in the exchange. So yun yung laman ng ating supermarket for businesses. Now, we often tell customers na, di ba, the ratio for investing in the Philippines, the reason why we recommend investing in the Philippines is because we are in a growth trajectory. We have a young population, we have underinvestment in infrastructure, and the government is now starting to invest in that. Then, of course, when the young population gets productive, we start working, we started earning and having kids on our own, then that's a huge potential for growth. Diba? Yan yung period in our economy where growth is really natural. And the only way or the only step that the government has to do is to make sure that we are put into a productive environment for us to earn so much more. And that is the reason why we want to invest in the Philippines, because of that reality. And who do you think will benefit from all that growth? And the answer is, of course, the 30 largest companies in the Philippines. When people start renting their houses, buying their homes, you have Ayala Land, Mega World, and so DMCI, you have, all these companies. When you buy your internet, either from PLDT or Globe, when you start your banking relationship, when you go to the mall, when you go on a trip, you ride Cebu Pacific, you ride the ferry, when you celebrate in Boracay, you drink your beer. That's either Alliance Global or San Miguel Corporation. When you ride your car that you bought from Toyota, most likely that's part of GT Capital Holdings. Or if it's a Honda, it's part of Ayala Corporation. Then you drive through a highway that's owned by Metro Pacific, you pay toll. Everything, every economic movement, these 30 largest companies will be there, to earn. And why not, as early as now, allow your kids to participate in these 30 companies, either buying them as a fund or buying into these companies. Okay. So there are keys to success in the stock market, knowing that it's a supermarket for businesses. Number one, you have to buy good companies. Yeah? Not an easy thing to do, but I'll tell you all about what we do as your broker to help you decide on this. Second is invest for the long term. Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, the stock market is the best earning asset in the world, no? But ang kapalit niyan is volatility. But if you invest over a long period of time, then that's to iron out that volatility. Third is diversify. Very important to not put all your eggs in one basket. Kaya nga nang sabi natin kanina, the 30 largest companies, it's a good way to diversify already. Don't concentrate on just one company because nobody can really tell what the future is, for these companies. And best to yun nga, diversify your investment into several different companies. Fourth is consider buying the basket. Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, especially if you're starting out, don't just buy one or two or three companies in the index. Why not buy the index or buy a fund? It to some ways it's really just buying the entire basket, and later I'll talk to you more about it. So here are the resources that are available from UTrade. So kanina sabi natin, how do you pick good companies? Then we have reports. If you open your UTrade account, then you have access to these two reports. One is the on-target report that generally specifies the picks of our research team. If you're into value investing, you're looking at the growth of companies and its relative price, then this report is perfect for you. As you can see here, let me just activate my, activate my laser pointer. Tama dito, no? There's a PE band. It shows you that the stock market is really quite cheap right now. It shows you really an overview of the entire stock market and the basis of recommending certain shares. And at the bottom, I think at the end of this report, you can also get to see their stock picks. Second, if you're more of the trading type, if you ever happen to wander into trading stocks directly using technical analysis, we also have this trader's game plan. It's also another report that we give for free to our customers that will tell you naman some strategies that will help you trade. No, but of course that's not for the faint of heart. All right. So for another thing that I want to share with with you guys, know that now that we've talked about the stock market is the best performing asset in anywhere really. No, let me talk to you about another important lesson that you have to learn as a kid. Number one, I very important lesson I want to talk to you guys about. One of the very important lessons that you need to learn, or when you're starting out, is that for you to get a higher potential return, you have to take a higher amount of risk. No, and it's shown by this graph that I will show you here. No, as you increase the relative risk, you also get the possibility of return. So here's the cash in money market assets. You have the bonds, you have real estate, and you have the stock market. As you can see, the stock market has the highest relative return and the highest relative risk. Now, this is very important to note because this is going to be the benchmark for your decisions moving forward. And very important if you're spotting a scam. No? So most of the scams out there will try to pitch to you a really mind-boggling return. No? Parang yung double your money in 2 months, or I'll give you 100% return in 8 months, or something like that, something akin to that. But the first question that has to trigger in your mind is, what is the risk I'm taking for this return? No? If someone offers you a 20% return per annum, no? Or something crazy like 40, 50%, 80% per year, no? You ask them, what is the risk I'm taking for this amount of return? And if the answer is no, there's no risk, then that is most certainly a scam. Huwag niyong puntahan yun. No? In this case, the stock market, what is the risk? It's the volatility of the prices. On average, it gives you 14% based on the calculations we did from 2008 to 2021. On average, 14%. But volatility comes when you see the prices. No? Sometimes it's positive 40, sometimes it's negative 20, negative 30. So this is the risk that you're taking with the stock market, the volatility of prices. And remember, everyone, that as you increase the risk, the returns should also follow. Vice versa, if you increase the returns, the risk also goes up. Right? Remember that. So, for a quick summary on this section, The stock market is not a get rich quickly scheme, nor is it a place to gamble or take bets. That's certainly not what it is. You can certainly play it that way, but that is not going to be sustainable. Something that you can't repeat. No, luck cannot be repeated. Next, think of the stock market as a supermarket for businesses that you want to participate in. So as mentioned, consider investing in stocks how you would considering joining a business. Diba? I want you to apply that same scrutiny when you're investing in stocks as if a friend is inviting you to start a business. And fourth, finally, I want you guys to put in mind that the higher the amount of risk, the higher the possibility of return. They are always, almost always directly correlated. And if any investment, whatever it is, violates that rule, meaning you're taking higher returns but no risk, yung kausap mo yung risk. So remember that. All right, third is to use available help. no? We've talked about the stock market as a very difficult thing to engage. It's complicated. No, not a lot of people are successful in it, and to be honest, that's true. The stock market really is quite difficult. But for starter investors, there is available help, and that comes in the form of mutual funds. Now, what are mutual funds? These are pooled monies of investors. So pinagsama-sama yung mga pera ng iba't ibang investor. Now, what the fund does is it hires a fund manager to manage the fund, and it's invested across many different assets. And of course, since it's pooled monies of investors, you can afford the fund manager. That's the fund management fee that you see in the mutual fund. And it gives these following advantages. Number one, of course, is professional management. When you talk about professional fund management, it's not just one person. No? It's a team of persons. You have the fund manager himself. You have a strategist normally. If they have an economist on board, they also have the traders that buy and sell securities. They have the analysts that look at the companies. Then some of them even have investment committees to decide whether on to decide what companies to buy. Is it in the best interest of the fund? So you get all that benefit. No, so it's in this sense, it's perfect for people who don't know how to invest in the stock market. You can get the benefit from an investment manager, a professional manager. Next is low entry cost. No, if you're buying a stock, for instance, like an Ayala Corporation who's trading at let's say 1,000 pesos, no, the minimum board lot for Ayala is around 10 shares. So that's 10,000 pesos. Ayala pa lang yun. But for a fund, no, not only do you get a fund manager because you're pooling your money, but the entry cost is normally quite low. So for some funds, it's 500 pesos, some funds, it's 1,000 pesos, but for the dollar funds, it's quite more expensive now. So for 1,000 pesos, you already get to start investing. Third is diversification. For the index fund, for instance, this is just one of the types of funds that's invested only in the index. When you pay for it, you buy a mutual fund for 1,000 pesos, then you immediately get exposure to the 30 stocks that are part of that fund. Instant diversification. That's very ideal for people who are starting out. Fourth is that a mutual fund can give you access to opportunities. So I think this, remember, you're pooling the monies of many investors. And with size comes might when you're accessing opportunities. Like for instance, in the case of a money market fund, yung mga funds that are invested in cash assets or short-term securities, because of their size, they can command interest rates. When it's an IPO, the size can command participation in that particular IPO. The size can also dictate how much of a bond they can buy. So there are many different advantages of having size in the stock market. It's not easy to bully you. Like a retail investor, that might be a risk for you. So again, advantages: professional fund management, low entry cost. You're just paying, instead of paying a huge amount just to get started. It can be as low as 500 to 1,000 pesos. You get instant diversification and you have access to more opportunities when you invest in a fund. In the UTrade platform, you have access to around 36 different mutual funds, both in peso and US dollar. Now, of course, medyo marami pa rin yun. And at the end of the day, you'll ask us about, oy, ang dami naman yan. So, where do we invest? Na, a good place to start is the index fund. Kanina, we've talked about, the index. If you believe in the growth story of the Philippines, then you believe in the 30 largest companies because there's nobody other than them who will benefit from all this growth, no? And we recommend the index fund. Why? Number one, because as mentioned, you're investing in the growth story of the Philippines. In the next 50 years, we're gonna grow at breakneck speeds because of the young population. We call this the golden demographic era. And one of the best ways to participate is to invest in the index in 30 largest companies. Next, because of its low cost. Remember, a fund manager would spend less time managing an index fund than an actively managed fund. For the other funds, they get to, decide on the percentage of what stocks and when to buy, when to sell. For an index fund, it's much simpler because they just have to copy the index. So in that case, the cost is very low and the performance tends to be really high. Third, it's also easy to use and easy to monitor. No? Pagbukas mo ng balita, if there's any news in the index, then you know where your investments roughly are. It's easy to maintain as well, no? Because you're just looking at one index. And here are the index funds available in UTrade. We have the Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Equity Index Fund and the PAMI PhilAm Equity Index Fund, now managed by BPI Investment Management Inc. So in terms of performance, there's very little difference. So pili na kayo which brand you're more comfortable with. And in summary, for this section, we've talked about investment funds as structures that are designed to help investors who are just starting out. And we've talked about the benefits kanina. And next, if you're not sure what index fund to buy, then a good one is to buy index funds. No? Again, sa akin pa lang, it's just investing in the growth prospects of the Philippines over a long period of time. And as mentioned, the index funds invests in the 30 largest and most actively traded companies in the Philippines. Not just stocks, no. Think of it as the businesses, the 30 largest, yung 30 pinakamalalaking negosyo sa Pilipinas ay binibili mo with an index fund. All right, on to our last part. Now, make it a part of your family conversation. So in this picture, you can see a family having dinner, no? And I've started this with my own family. First, I talked to my wife about it. Now, of course, my kids are too young to understand what it is. But I've had a mentor once who started this with his family, no? So as young as 5, 6, or 8 years old, their children have stock portfolios already, and they talked about this over dinner. So anak, anong binili mo ngayon? So I bought Jollibee at 8 pesos. Remember, imagine buying that today. Jollibee is already in the hundreds, even went as high as almost 300 pesos. No? So, di ba? And you're starting out very, very young. And it can be a good conversation when you have to have with your kids. No? Instead of talk, instead of talking about some other things, some other show that they're uh, watching on TV, you make them responsible for a small amount of money, and you get to talk about it as well. Diba? Are there banks that you have talked about? No? Are there banks that you've invested into? Are there then you get into a conversation about conglomerates while they're why holding companies are an ideal investment because they're already diversified, and normally the price of the conglomerate is lower than the price of the children combined, no? So many other things. And when your children start being able to hear or read news from the internet or from television, you can start talking about the impact of that in their stock portfolios. And normally there are impacts, right? Like for instance, this pandemic can really wreak havoc to their portfolios. No? Then you start talking about, what are the resilient businesses? What do you think are resilient? What do you think are not resilient? And you talk to them about what they're doing right now. No? What do you think are businesses that will not do well in the pandemic? Number one is the malls. We don't anymore go to the malls. We don't, eat at restaurants anymore. So those are uh, businesses that will not fare very well in the pandemic. We haven't taken a trip for 2 years. What does that do with the airline? No, Philippine Airlines just declared bankruptcy in the United States. So these are the things that they have to be aware of to be responsible members of the financial economy. And you can start it, but by starting that investment, you can talk about it with your family. All right. So with that, I'd like to, of course, take a quick recap of what we just talked about today. You have to make use of your child's time as their advantage. Use it to start a long-term investing program. You also have to teach them what the stock market really is. It's a supermarket for businesses. It's not a place to gamble or take risks. Consider funds. That's why we put uh, the icon there of a shopping cart. No, consider a fund because you get the help from a fund manager, you get instant diversification, and you get access to many different opportunities. And finally, it's not late to start that conversation with the children, no, about the market, about their investing. And once you make this a habit, then I'm very sure your child is in a better financial footing. Thank you and have a nice day.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Ed. Now, allow me to share my screen and share with you guys on how to open a UTrade account today. So we have 4 steps. First one, go to www.utradeph.com and click the register now to download the forms. Step 2, fill out the forms. And we have a special reminder to adults that please do not forget to fill out your tax identification number. Step 3, provide your identification. So these are the sample IDs that we accept: passport, driver's license, UMID, and etc. At wag na natin kalimutan na ang ID natin ay meron dapat ng signature at photo na clear. And another one, as what Sir Ed mentioned a while ago, we have an interest for account or ITF account for 17 years old and below. So if you're interested to open for your child, we have additional requirements wherein you must submit a valid student ID with signature and a copy of birth certificate. Now question, if wala pa pong student valid ID, a copy of birth certificate is okay. And a guardian must also submit an accomplished account opening forms. Step 4, scan and submit. Scan the documents and submit it via email to utrade@unicapital-inc.com and equities@unicapital-inc.com. So our team will go through the documents, and once they give you the go signal, you may now submit the forms via courier, the physical forms via courier. Ito po ang aming office address in Makati. And since you joined our webinar today, you can avail the UTrade Stock Investment Account for as low as 5,000 pesos. Both po yan para sa adult and ITF or interest for account. Account opening details will be sent to via email. And for more questions about the account opening, we may answer it via email. Thank you, everyone.